It's time to down tools for a bit. Welcome to the ToolShed, the influential podcast for anyone and everyone involved in the building industry. Here's your host, Mick Hawes.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the ToolShed Podcast. In this episode, speaking to Dan Bailey from Tradie HQ. It's a very, very cool setup. I think it's only over in Western Australia at this time, but we'll find out all of the details and all of the lowdown about it as we go. Before we get started and I start yabbering to Dan, wanted to remind you about the Builder Scorecard. There's a link in the description. Make sure you click it, answer a few questions. It'll take 90 seconds and it will give you a score on each of the 4 critical parts of your building business. Once you've done that, we'll email you the score, but we'll also email you a custom PDF with suggestions on what you might want to have a look at with each of those areas of your business based on the score you got. So it's customized on whether you did well or not so well as to what you should do. So it's a really fast way of making progress in the right direction, because sometimes you're just a little bit too close to the coalface to really see what's going on. So it's a really cool way of getting that information super fast. Let's get into it. Dan Bailey, I believe you're in Western Australia. And
correct, mate. Yep. Back here in the past.
You're the main man. Yes, that's right. I'm coming to you from the future. I'll give you all of the tips on the horse racing. And it's Tradie HQ. I first saw it about 18 months ago. Been trying to track you down ever since then. You're a very busy man, very hard to get, but we have you now. And I wanted to talk to you about Tradie HQ because I think it's just a wicked idea, and I want to know how it works. But first, I want to know a bit about you and where you came from and why you decided to put together Tradie HQ, because it's a fantastic idea. So, what inspired it all?
Yeah, right. No, well, first, thanks for having me on the podcast, mate. And yeah, it was hard to get it off the ground, and here we are. So a few technical difficulties, and we're into it. But yeah, so Tradie HQ. So I'm an electrical contractor or electrician by trade, and now it's probably 7 or 8 years ago now. I was fortunate enough to be involved with another business which had a large sort of yard and that sort of thing. And at the time, my electrical contracting business consisted of only me, and I had 2 young kids as well, and we lived in sort of suburbia, and I found myself doing quite a few jobs, which were only really made possible by the fact that I had access to this large yard, which essentially was available 24/7. So, my sort of daily routine with the kids at that time was, I'd go home from work, help settle them and that sort of thing. And then if there was any work to be done, then I had the luxury of being able to go out and do that work in another workshop, whether it was sort of, noisy work that you couldn't necessarily do on the driveway and in the middle of the suburbs and that sort of stuff. And what I came to realize was that it was just the fortune of me having the access to this workshop that allowed me to do some of these jobs, because they weren't, technically complex or didn't require a lot of people, but it just required that ability to be able to conduct the work away from home, basically. And then so with that in mind, I started having a look around. I thought, well, what are the options out there for trade-based businesses in my position where, you're only running a small business. It might be you plus an apprentice or you plus a couple of workers and that sort of thing. And you don't necessarily either have the financial capacity or the confidence in, work in the pipeline or a number of other factors that would stop you from, taking the leap and getting your own lease on a commercial property or purchasing your own property. So I had a bit of a look around, and I was already fairly familiar with the concept of co-working and flexible workplaces and that sort of stuff, but obviously understood at that point it was really only targeted at the sort of white collar tech creative startup sort of businesses who predominantly, prefer to work out of the CBD and don't have the challenges that we do as tradies around, trying to fit a ute under a car park when you got ladders on the roof, or you're pulling a trailer and that sort of stuff. Not to mention the cohort of fellow tenants probably is a little bit different from our typical demographic that we like to hang around with as well.
Yeah. So tell me about that, because I think that there's obviously something I think really valuable about being in a space where there are other tradies. Like, it's one thing to have your workshop in amongst, a sign writer and a something else and a printer and a blah blah blah, but being in a place with tradies, what are the benefits and the value of, apart from the fun, I'd imagine, but what are the business benefits of having tradies working side by side in a sort of a small complex in an area together?
Yeah, no, there are a lot, and I would say that from when I had the idea for Tradie HQ and the evolution that it's undergone since then. Not only during the planning phase, and then realizing that certain features weren't required, all the way through to a test and adjust throughout the last sort of 5 years, and how things have changed and been adjusted. One of the core benefits that I always envisaged was the fact that you're in a network of your peers, and that has so many benefits. Some of which I expected, other ones which came sort of unexpected and was a nice surprise. But the main one, well, there's a couple. There's the natural idea that there's shared work. We've got plumbers, electricians, builders, a bookkeeper, all these other sort of complementary businesses, I guess, where a plumber might need an isolator done for a hot water system, and a Sparky, needs to bring someone in to do the plumbing on one of their reno projects or something. So there's that aspect to it. Secondary to that, or I guess what supports that, is the fact that there is a degree of mutual understanding, and I guess accountability, by the fact that if you are using another member of Tradie HQ to do a job for you, that person doing the job, not only can you assume that they are of a similar business ethic as you are, by virtue of the fact that they're a member of Tradie HQ, but also there's that accountability whereby there's a strong possibility that you're going to have to stand in the kitchen next to the coffee machine with that other subcontractor, and if things go pear-shaped, it's going to make it a bit awkward.
Yeah. So there's the motivation to do it once and do it right, and look after your fellow tradie there. I noticed that that on the property you've got an in-house gym. You've also got an in-house meeting rooms and training rooms. I'd imagine that the value of having access to that would be immense for a business. Like, one of the things that we promote for our builders is that when you do your initial meeting, you establish the criteria for the relationship before you start talking about the project. And one of the best things you can do is get them off-site, away from their home, into your own environment, or at least onto a neutral territory, to be able to have like a boardroom or a meeting room or something like that, have access to that without the cost of having it sitting there 24/7, only ever being used by you. I'd imagine that would be really valuable for some of your members as well.
Yeah, exactly. So as you said there, Mick, we've got across the property, we've got 3 different meeting rooms, all of different sizes. All 3 have your sort of standard AV, TV and teleconferencing. That's a bit of an old term now. The days
I understand what you mean. I used to have a cassette player.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but no, exactly like you said, the whole point being is that, and again, the Tradie HQ model was derived from, a lot of the features of your traditional co-working spaces, which, includes that sort of end of trip facility so you can have a shower. We've added the gym because, for me, that was a personal experience thing whereby I found myself going to the gym in the morning, and I'd be sitting down in between exercises and, responding to emails or sending an invoice or following up on other bits and pieces. And I thought, I would actually prefer that was reversed. If I was sitting in my office and wanted to take a half an hour break or whatever, then you can go to the gym that way and sort of reverse it around. So,
Yep.
the convenience of having the gym here, and then like you say, plus those other features that you would ordinarily have to have some degree of capital outlay if you wanted to develop them within your own business. But again, if you're not at a size where it's getting utilized all the time, it's a bit of a waste of time. And so, yeah, the whole idea of I've sort of skipped over a bit there. So probably one of the main differences between Tradie HQ and a traditional co-working space is that we've added in the storage option. So,
Okay.
so as a tradie, again, there would be nothing stopping an electrician or a plumber or a builder from getting an office at a co-working space in the CBD. However, a lot of the times when we're running our trade-based businesses out of home, it's not just the fact that we're using the old kids' playroom as an office. A lot of the time, half of the garage is filled, if not the whole garage is filled with equipment, parts that we don't want to throw away because we might get to use them again at some stage in the future.
I thought you were going to say shit.
Yeah, well, yeah, I wasn't sure what the rating was of the podcast, but yeah, definitely
Whatever.
shit.
We're rated whatever.
Excellent. So that was the biggest thing, is that ability to make that clean break away from home, because on top of the ability to be able to properly separate work from home, the other side is like I say, having that ability to, if you've got guys working for you, they still don't have to go back to your house to get stock and that sort of stuff, because as was explained to one of my early builder tenants, is that he runs a team of like 35 subbies, and sometimes they can be pretty itinerant, and so you never know how a subcontract relationship's going to go. You might not necessarily want that person knowing where you live, sort of thing.
Yeah. I also just noticed on the website that you've got your own podcast. Tell me about the podcast that you run. What's the focus of it? What's the name of it? Where do we find it? What are the topics that are covered in the podcast?
Yeah, so it is. When I first came up with the idea for Tradie HQ, I ran it past a mate of mine who he was in the health and fitness game and had started up a few gyms and that sort of thing. And I just ran the idea past him. He said, "No, yeah, that's a great idea." He said, "What are your plans for marketing?" I said, "I haven't put a great deal of thought into that yet, other than just leveraging my own network, sort of thing." He goes, "Oh, you should consider starting a podcast." I was like, "Yeah, right." And this is a while ago, and he said, "Look, I run a podcast for this Kokoda track trip that I do," and he said, "It's it's free. I offer up all the information." He said, "And I reckon I've probably generated 45 grand's worth of work out of it, just because it sort of makes me the subject matter expert to the listeners." And so I said, "Oh, yeah, right. What do you reckon I should do?" And he said, "Oh, I don't know. You could do like 10 top tips for tradies and all this sort of stuff." And so I went away with that and sort of had to think about it and started putting together some stuff. But at the end of the day, out of those 10 top tips, I might be able to be considered somewhat of an expert on maybe one or two of them. And the rest of them I was just gleaning from the internet. So I started to think about my own listening habits and realized that, a lot of stuff I listened to was interview based, like, Joe Rogan or, any other popular sort of podcaster. And so I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll just reach out to a bunch of people who are sort of relevant in our industry and just cover that. So it's called the Tradie HQ podcast. So it's on all of the platforms. I think we're up to about 53, but it's one of those things. It was very easy to do when Tradie HQ was in its infancy, but as soon as things started getting busier, it was, and as testament to the challenges we had getting this one off the ground today.
Yeah.
Sort of fell by the wayside, but I really enjoyed it. It was a little bit self-indulgent for me as well, because it's amazing. People who may not necessarily talk to you at any other time, as soon as you say you're going to put a microphone in front of their face and they can tell their story to the world, you get to speak to some pretty interesting people. So, but it was good, because Tradie HQ started right around COVID. So it was December 2020 was our grand opening. So when COVID was, creating all sorts of challenges for business owners, let alone in general, let alone tradies, I did a few podcast series with my accountant, just covering all of that stuff around JobKeeper, JobSeeker, and all those sorts of obligations. So I got a lot of good feedback from that, because we were able to take all of that legislation and all the technical jargon and distill it down into a way that sort of the general person can understand it, or at least sort of have a better understanding.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. We're always trying to bring you information that's going to make your life as a builder much easier. So give us a thumbs up and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. Yeah. So currently it's in Western Australia. Which part of Western Australia is the current Tradie HQ?
So the current Tradie HQ is in a suburb of Perth called Osborne Park, which is about 5 to 8 k's as the crow flies from the CBD, but it would be what I consider the commercial CBD north of the river, because we've got the Swan River that runs through, so we're very divided between north and south of the river. So yeah, it's Osborne Park. It's great. It's a great location for accessibility. You know, like I mentioned before, around vehicles and getting into the city and undercroft parking and that sort of stuff. Where we are, we've got a lot of car parking bays. It's good access in and out of Osborne Park. All of the supplies that you could think of for any of the trades are within, a 3K radius. So it's and again, the proximity to the CBD and also the other northern suburbs is a great bonus.
Yeah. The reason I asked about Western Australia, like, it just seems to me like it's a really great idea. It's a fantastic concept. Do you have any plans of duplicating it in other states or even in other parts of Western Australia now that you've got the model?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, definitely. It's taken a bit of refinement to get to where we are as I sit here now. But one thing that was refreshing is, like, it was an idea, and when you come up with a new idea and you can't find any example of it that's been done previously, there's probably for one of two reasons. One is that it's a stupid idea, or the second one is that it is a genuinely good idea and just no one ever thought about it or couldn't sort of make the plunge to have a go. And so I've been lucky that from the outset we've always maintained. I mean, so we've got 21 offices and a decent variety of sort of storage mediums, and we've always sat at around between 75% and 110% occupied. 110% being we've got a waiting list and that sort of stuff. So we are currently in the middle of a couple of different discussions with different people around the locations that we will expand to here in WA. The first one is more than likely going to be south of the river, so we'll help our brothers and sisters out south of the river to make the same thing. And the benefit of my sort of vision for Tradie HQ was always that it would be like a 24/7 gym, where you might have an office here in Osborne Park, but if you had a client in a south of the river suburb and you needed to have a meeting, then you'd be able to jump online and book meeting room 2 out at the Myrie Tradie HQ, for instance. Yeah. So again, it gives that sort of smaller business an opportunity to
feel bigger.
Feel bigger, and just like you said, that first impression, right? So instead of having to meet someone at a noisy cafe and battle the bloody blue rinse set and the pram pushers, then you can actually have a professional meeting room that you can get a decent coffee and make an impression.
Yeah. So just go back a few steps, because, like, cruising around the website, the property looks expansive, it looks impressive, it's very well signed, it just looks very classy. What did it look like when you first started? Like, how did you start off small and it expanded, or did you start off with all of this property and most of it was empty? What was the progress?
Yeah, so again, just going back to the fact that it was right around COVID, so I'd been looking at a lot of properties around the Osborne Park area and beyond, but what had happened with this particular property is the rear building had been vacant for 18 months. The front building was tenanted by a marketing agency, and they used to sublease the upstairs part of that building to a small boutique builder. And once COVID hit, the boutique builder packed up shop, and the marketing agency couldn't sustain the lease on their own. And so they sort of were in a break lease situation, and I managed to get in contact with the leasing agent and said to him that I was interested. And at this point in time, I was being fairly cagey about what my purpose was. I was just saying that it was for my electrical contracting business because I had this thing in my mind that I didn't want anyone to steal my idea and run off with it. And so we get into this email backwards and forward negotiation, and we get to a bit of a stalemate where he said, "Oh, look, we want this amount of money per square meter," and I said, "Look, I've had a good look around Osborne Park. I know what the sort of market value is, and I'm not willing to pay that." And this is on a Friday, and so I'd sort of resigned to the fact that was we were just parting our ways. And over the weekend, I'd noticed that the leasing agent had looked at my LinkedIn profile, and I did have a little bit of a blurb on there about Tradie HQ. And he sent me an email. And actually, he rang me on Monday, and he said, "Dan, what are your actual plans for the property?" I said, "Oh, look, mate," I said, "it's I can see you checked out LinkedIn." I said, "Look, it's for Tradie HQ," and I explained the concept. And he said, "Yeah, right." He said, "Because," he goes, you weren't to know this." He said, "But the owner of that land is actually my dad, and he bought it back in the 70s and built his own plumbing business to be one of the biggest in Perth."
Wow.
And when I told him about your plans, he told me to give the property to you for the price that you'd asked for.
Wow. Wow.
I was like, "All right, well, there you go." So that was that. So that's how we secured the property. And it's funny because the first idea that I had, or the first sort of concept for Tradie HQ, I thought the demand was going to be for that typical hot desking arrangement where, you don't actually have an office. There's just a bunch of monitors, and you can sit down with your laptop, do your invoicing at the end of the day, and then go home. As it turned out, the demand was for offices because people just wanted to have that clear break from home, and that was that. So where I'd open planned most of upstairs to be the co-working space, I ended up having to rebuild 3 of those offices
Right.
to allow for the demand for the offices. So, it was interesting, and that's what I was sort of talking about earlier on, is just the evolution, and I guess that idea that if you come up with a plan, like you can't be too rigid in sticking to your guns. You've sort of got to be comfortable with a broad plan, but also not be afraid to, and I hate the term, but pivot in another direction, subject to what the demand might be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that brings me to my next question. That's probably got nothing to do with Tradie HQ, but you've done a podcast in the past, and I'm sure you've got opinions about it. And you started this business in a global pandemic where things became quite interesting, and there was a lot of uncertainty around, particularly the building industry at the time. And there's some things going on right as we speak. Mr. Trump's introducing tariffs. There's a lot of concern, a lot of uncertainty. I watched a video of the Prime Minister of Singapore doing an announcement to his country just this morning about the effect that these tariffs could potentially have on the economic stability of Singapore. The Australian stock market has reacted to it in a negative way. What are your thoughts? What are the rumblings? Are the trades-based businesses starting to talk about this? Are they concerned about it at all yet?
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with a fellow Sparky today, actually, and he was saying that a lot of his work has quietened down, and he sort of attributes that to, again, like you said, the lack of confidence in the general consumer around how things are going to pan out. So, we end up in that sort of not low risk, but people aren't. There's not much discretionary spending, I guess. So people are sort of, as opposed to getting something done, they'll be foregoing that for the sake of the uncertainty that's around them. I mean, we're over here in Perth. We've recently seen a couple of big and long-term builders go belly up again. So yeah, and I guess it is uncertain. But my observations for the time that I've been in business is that it's it's such a diverse. Every trade has such a diverse offering. It always is really subjective to what that particular business specializes in and where they derive the majority of their work from.
Mm.
It's probably very few trade-based business, I guess, that would have the luxury of such a broad offering that they can weather any storm. And so it's usually the ones who don't just go out and buy a new Land Cruiser after their first big job that sort of stick around. That's what I've found.
Yeah. And what's the value of the community in Tradie HQ? Because I know that back in I guess early 2020 when COVID first hit, we had that first lockdown, and people thought, well, I can't go to work, or I might not be able to go to work, and all that sort of stuff. In Builders Business Black Belt, we introduced a 7-day a week Zoom discussion for all of our members, just so everyone could talk about what they were worried about and their fears and all of that sort of stuff. And it was really therapeutic. It was really beneficial to be able to talk to people. And we came up with an approach because we felt that we knew what impact this was going to have on the market, and helped our members to prepare for that. And as it turned out, we were right. And the big majority of our members had some of the best years of their business through the COVID, because they had a different energetic approach, a different philosophical approach. And I'm just wondering, the community in Tradie HQ, is it something that you talk to the lads a lot, and is there some form of leadership in the community around Tradie HQ? Because I just think community for trades-based business is critical, particularly if it's being led by somebody who has a degree of certainty and optimism rather than pessimism, because that could kill a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And yeah, COVID obviously was a big part of that. Now, look, rightly or wrongly, I think maybe the statute of limitations expired now, but by virtue of the fact that all of my tenants were at that point in time basically considered essential services, as trades. So I figured that since this was basically a business comprised purely of essential services, that we would be able to remain open. I mean, I didn't publicize it, but it was something that I broached with the members, and there are a few people that preferred that particular sort of measures were taken in terms of face masks and sanitizer and that sort of thing, which was fine. So we just had a meeting. We satisfied those concerns and everything, and everyone sort of got on with it. And it was good, like you say, similar to your obviously your network's a lot broader than just this little local one, but just that community, the camaraderie, and the support that everyone could rely on was definitely a massive bonus. And I mean, at the time, we also, one of my foundation tenants then was a company that specialised in labour hire to the event industry. Now, as you can imagine, events were turned off overnight, and so consequently, all of their work was. So they chose they sort of sat down. We had a little bit of a planning session. I sat in and provided my input as well, and they said, "Oh, we've got all of these we've got this casual workforce that are all skilled in telehandlers, forklifts, crane operators, and that sort of stuff. What could we shift these guys into?" And they came up with the idea of basically a short-term labour hire company. Where I mean, as an example, is a lot of while they were still tenants here. I mean, they're one of our success stories that have outgrown us. But while they were still tenants here, a lot of I did personally as well, use them for, you might need a labourer to dig a hole or, install some fence posts and that sort of thing. And it was a pretty easy step to walk next door into an office and say, "Hey boys, we got anyone available tomorrow for blah, blah, blah." So that as an example, and it goes back into what we discussed before, just around that reciprocal sort of referral and business sharing. So yeah. Anyway, long answer to a short question. Around COVID and that, the community and the support was 100% beneficial to all involved, for sure.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's a great initiative. It's a great idea, and I think it would be wonderful when it starts to expand all over the country, it's a fantastic model that I think that can help trades-based businesses out immensely, because the cost and the risk of having your own property to have that professional look can be well, I mean, it can cause the it can be to the detriment of the business. I mean, I just drove past another builder that looks like they say they're relocating, but the scuttlebutt is everything's for sale and people are being laid off because they built their own beautiful tilt-up panel 2-story glass-fronted offices with displays and workshop out the back and big car park. There's big costs in that, and if you can sort of reduce those costs into a monthly payment and have somebody else look after the maintenance and what have you of it, it's probably a great investment.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, it's I do, and as most people do, you tend to focus a lot on the successes, and so we've had some really good successes. The guys from Safe Style Eyewear are probably the biggest one. They started out here, and then they were a sponsor, and then when Tim decided he wanted to move out of his dad's lounge room, he got an office. Then and his general manager got an office, and their marketing team got an office, and then someone else got an office. And by that stage, I had 4 offices, and I said, "Look, you guys I'm too exposed to you guys now. You're gonna have to give me 6 months notice to move." And in 6 months' time, they had, and they'd gotten their own property around the corner, and they've done really well. However, there's also something that I reflect on, and that is the fact that we've also had a lot of people who have come to Tradie HQ because they did want to test the waters and see how it went, or it might have been because they had a decent pipeline of work coming up and they wanted to step out, and it hasn't always gone to plan. And so, they've had the luxury of being able to stop having their own office without the exposure of, the remainder of a 2, 3, 5 year lease. So, it's just a matter of sort of giving their 30 days notice to cancel and vacating. So, and I think sometimes I'm probably a little bit more proud of those, because it means that, that person had a chance to have a go. Hopefully they learned something along the way while they were here, or at least by their experience. And yeah, they weren't, like you said, it didn't lead to, a degree of financial ruin. They were able to sort of say, "Oh, okay, well, that didn't work out," and then, continue to feed their family and not close their business.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. So obviously at this stage, it is people in that area of Perth, north of the river, I think you said, that it would make sense to reach out. I'm assuming that there's opportunities, spaces coming up reasonably regularly, because you do have short-term leases. What's the best way of contacting you and reaching out and finding out what the go is?
Yeah, it is north of the river, or and again, it's just when I first had the idea, and you're going through your Google ads and that sort of thing, and you look at what sort of radius you want to market to outside of your business. And I always thought, 5K radius, there's a fair chunk of people there, and given the proximity to Osborne Park, then it's a high likelihood that a lot of them are tradies. But what I found sort of a year into it was that we had quite a few businesses whose house, obviously that's where they were working out of previously, was sort of further north. And so once that guy or girl had put on an employee, they're like, well, predominantly our work is in the CBD. I don't necessarily want to have to pay my tradie to drive all the way up to my house in wherever and then drive back. So then it became, the actual reach and the sort of demographic property-wise that I was looking at sort of is a bit more far-reaching. So yeah, that was just an interesting thing that came out of the experience. But no, we do have offices come up available reasonably frequently. We don't have a massive turnover. In fact, I think I worked it out the other day. 20% of my tenants at the moment are foundation tenants. So it's they do come and go, or they stay. But the easiest way is to just jump on the website, and there's a button there that says book a tour. Because without doubt, every tour that I've taken through Tradie HQ, the end comment is, "Wow, it's a lot bigger than I realised." So it's always better to come down and have a wander around. I can explain the lay of the land, or Ant will, our reception manager, and yeah, from there we can put together a proposal and take it from there.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Love your work. So it's tradiehqwa.com.au. We're going to put the link in the description, so all you need to do is click on it, and you'll find that take the tour or book a tour button there. Maybe even give them a call if you've got any specific questions. But love what you're doing. I certainly hope it expands to other states, and it was a fun and informative chat. So it was worth the 18 months of back and forth to have this conversation on the podcast. So thanks for being on the podcast.
Mate. No, my pleasure. And again, thank you. And thanks for doing the podcast, mate. I've listened to quite a few of yours, so it's always good to hear your perspective and get your guests' ideas. So appreciate it, mate. And again, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, our pleasure. We're always looking for people that are contributing in a positive way to the forward movement and the benefit of the whole building industry, which is what I think you're doing with Tradie HQ. It's fantastic stuff. So thank you again. It was a pleasure to meet, and we'll be talking to you again in the future, I hope.
Yeah, no, me too, mate. Thanks a lot.
So that's it for this episode. If you are in WA, in that space around north of the river or south of the river, might be coming to you south of the river in the not too distant future, as was mentioned there, reach out and have a chat, because I can't recommend enough being in a place where you've got a forward-thinking, positive, optimistic community around you, and it sounds like that's what they're building there, and you've got all of the resources. You can keep yourself fit and healthy in the gym. You can present a professional first impression with the meeting rooms. You've got training rooms there if you want to do some training sessions with your team. It's all there. It sounds like a really wonderful thing, and I really do hope that it expands to other states. But that's it for this episode. Before we get out of here, I want to remind you of the Builder's Scorecard. Jump on there. It'll take you 90 seconds and you'll get some really cool stuff in your email to help you identify where you need to work, what you need to do on it to improve your business quite quickly. So that's a worthwhile 90-second activity. We'll be back with another episode of the ToolShed Podcast. Before you know it, I'm Mick Hawes from Builder's Business Black Belt. That is all. I'm out. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the ToolShed. If this podcast struck a chord with you, make sure you spread the word by sharing it with your mates in the building industry. We love your help to make the building industry better for everyone involved.